on Season 2 of the WCS Wild Audio Podcast.
This project is a part of a bigger strategy by WCS of addressing environmental crimes.
A new WCS initiative supported by the U.S. Agency for International Development seeks to address the crisis of transnational wildlife crime that threatens both biodiversity and the lives and livelihoods of people in the Amazon.
Imagine civil society actively and consciously working for a sustainable future in the Amazon.
After 2 years of delay due to the COVID pandemic, the long-awaited 15th conference of the parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity is upon us.
We are in the midst of a biodiversity crisis. Ecosystems are collapsing, species are becoming more and more endangered. We are also in the midst of a climate crisis. We're also in the midst of a pandemic crisis. We're hopeful that governments will adopt a strong, meaningful framework that deals with all threats to biodiversity and commits the governments, the global community, to take action to turn around what we've done to our planet.
If we want to protect species and their habitats, we need to better understand both what we have and what we are losing according to agreed-upon scientific criteria. That's the premise behind Key Biodiversity Areas, or KBAs, says Peter Chaurier.
The idea of the KBAs is that they're a way of identifying important areas for nature across the planet. The United Nations brought together a task force and a working group to help identify these important places for nature that would synthesize all the things that we care about in terms of biodiversity, or a lot of them, and give us a single tool that would help us to figure out what are the really critical places that we need to save across the planet. It's easy to get bogged down on things that we're losing, and KBAs are about what's left, and in a lot of cases, what's going well.
Right now, wolverines are up against a relentless opponent. Climate change is impacting the Arctic in many ways. One of the most obvious for wolverines is the snow.
Snowmelt is already occurring 2 weeks earlier in some parts of the Arctic than it did just a few decades ago, right? And that trend is continuing. So what's happening to these wolverines as they're being pushed out of the dens earlier and earlier? Maybe the kits are being exposed to predators earlier.
Often when we think about conservation, we think about those apex animals, like polar bears, and they become the focus of conservation. And to me, these animals like wolverines, they're, what we call mesocarnivores, they're in the middle. They're an important cog in the system, and we're only learning now about why they're so important.
WCS Wild Audio is a production of the Wildlife Conservation Society. We'll be back soon with our third season. In the meantime, catch up on all the episodes you may have missed from the first 2 seasons at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.